learning content for them. But prior to that, I worked for a company called Virtual Training Company,
Yeah,
VTC. Have you heard
VTC.
of them?
I remember your training there on that one too.
Do you? Gosh, you have been tracking me
90,
for a while.
97, 90 something, right?
Yeah, that's right, definitely. So I was their Dreamweaver author for just under 10 years, actually.
What were they using back then to record? On
Oh gosh, we used a variety of applications. Really, Hypercam was one of them,
Hypercam. Okay, yeah.
and
You guys are
obviously
missing all this stuff for the
Camtasia.
recording.
But I first started off.
But we'll get back to that. You know what, Mark? Let's hold that
Yeah.
off, and we'll bring some of that out because you and I are basically dinosaurs, so we have to talk about our old days.
Yeah, I've been doing this a long time in one shape or another.
Yep. All right. So what we are going to do is I'm going to mute your speakers for a moment, or your inputs over here. I'm going to turn the screen black. We're going to run an intro. You won't hear the intro for some odd reason. It doesn't go to have a mix minus on this mixer. So, or actually,
Sure.
Wirecast doesn't have a mix minus, so I can't play it back without getting about 400 tons of echo when we do this. So, but it will record correctly once we start the recording. So I
Okay.
am going to close up this window. You're going to go see. Whoops, didn't want to do that one. Let's do this one. All right. So we are now in our dark mode. I am going to mute both your channels for a moment, and we are going to go live right now.
You're listening to eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge.
Hello and welcome to eLearnChat, our new podcast featuring prominent leaders, shakers and movers in the e-learning and training industry. Your co-hosts are Rick Zanotti and Terrence Wing.
This episode of eLearnChat is brought to you by Relate Corporation at www.relate.com and also by Liquid Learn at www.liquidlearn.com. Hi everyone, I'm Rick Zanotti and welcome to our 8th episode of eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. Today we've got Mark Fletcher with us from the UK. He's going to be sharing some of his experiences with rapid e-learning development, voiceover work, and just a whole mess of stuff. We'll take a stroll down memory lane a little bit as well. And joining us today is our co-host, Terrence Wing. Terrence, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. It's great to be here and great to be in the chat room with all of our a lot of regulars and a lot of new people who have joined us as well. And let me get the administrative stuff out of the way here, Rick. And I'll say bathrooms are located down the hall and to the right. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we are simulcasting this show in several places. So you can catch it here at justin.tv /eLearnChat. /Relate Corp. And we also simulcast it on the ISD 2.0 Facebook fan page and on the Liquid Learn website. So those are three places that you can, at any time when we record this, you can catch the live show. And you can catch our recordings at eLearnChat.podbean.com. And I will go ahead and post that address in the chat room. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to use Twitter at the #eLearnChat hashtag, or you can also type your questions into the Justin TV chat room. That's all the administrative stuff, Rick.
And don't forget the bathrooms are to the right or to the left, depending where
That's
you're
right.
standing. All right, well, today we have a special guest, an old friend. He's not that old, actually, but he's been around doing this kind of work for a long time. He's got some great insights on rapid e-learning development. He's a very good voiceover artist. An excellent training manager. We've been looking at his work for a very long time. In today's day and age, 10 years is a long time. He's been doing it longer than 10 years. So please join us in welcoming our friend, Mark Fletcher. Hello, Mark.
Hello, everyone.
How are you today, Mark?
I'm good, thank you, Rick. It's great to be able to participate today in eLearnChat. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, that's great. We're glad you could make it. And for all those who aren't sure where Mark is, he is in the United Kingdom. and he is actually near Liverpool. So I think he knows some of the Beatles personally. Is that a fair judgment? Or
Absolutely, yes. Me and Paul McCartney, we hang out a lot. I'm joking.
you're going to do an imitation of Paul later on, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And we got quite the diverse group here too, because we're based in the United States, but we've got Australia represented in the chat room, and Belgium also in the chat room, and I think that's about all I recognize. But if anybody out there is from another country, be sure to put that into the chat room or Twitter so that we know where you're listening from.
And I believe RJ Hackers has joined us today. He is with Adobe. I believe he's in the Adobe Learning Group again now, which is great. And he's joining us. He's an old friend from Adobe, and I believe he knows Mark pretty well. And he's in San Diego. That's another country altogether.
Absolutely.
Mark, tell us a little bit about rapid e-learning. What have your experiences been with getting stuff out there quickly and effectively?
I think the most important thing to bear in mind when you're creating rapid e-learning is the fact that you want to make sure that your content is going to be memorable, it's going to be meaningful, it's going to motivate people to actually want to go through the course in the first place. And obviously, from a manager's point of view, you also want to make sure that it's measurable. It's the good old 4 M's that Dr. Allen used to talk about.
What were the 4 M's?
The 4 M's were meaningful, memorable, motivational, and measurable. And so just, the whole idea of making sure that the content that you're creating is engaging for the learner. Back in the day when I first started, one of our big considerations wasn't to do with how much content we could put into our lessons. It was more about, how much bandwidth a particular user had available, because at that time we were all still working with 56K modems. Whereas now, obviously, bandwidth isn't an issue, but we still have to bear in mind that, working memory is a very short thing, and so therefore making sure that you have very precise and concise learning material is very important.
You and I do go back a long way. We started doing multimedia development for real about 1995.
Right.
And you're right, 56K modems, ISDN lines were a commodity back then. And I remember back then we were dealing with Macromedia. We had Authorware is what we were using at the time. I think you were using Authorware at one point, right?
Yeah, I dabbled with Authorware a little bit, but the first big company that I worked with as far as web-based training was concerned was a company called Virtual Training Company, VTC. And we decided against going down that particular route. They wanted to have learning content that was a bit like having an online version of a user guide. And so therefore we were using programs such as Camtasia and Hypercam and all other good programs like that.
Yeah, that's great. And also, I remember back then we had we were putting out full screen e-learning back around 95, 96 using Authorware and on the web, and people were going. In fact, Macromedia was saying, "How did you do that?"
Yeah,
and
I
our
can
comment
imagine.
was, "We read your manuals."
Somebody had to.
Somebody had to. It was all there. It's just that they were recommending 320 by 240 resolution, which is pretty small.
Yeah.
And we said, no, that's too small for e-learning. Let's do, even though we've gone full circle now, we're doing mobile learning where it's 320 by 240 again, or worse. So it's sort of interesting how the industry kind of went back around. The only thing that's gotten better is font sizes have gotten bigger. So I guess that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And also the versatility, of course, of the Flash platform has made things a lot easier, because now, of course, we can include interaction, which is something back in the day when I started, I desperately wanted to be able to include. But unfortunately, at that time, there just wasn't the flexibility of doing it.
No, that's true. Now, can you tell that to Apple, who doesn't seem to think that interactivity is or that Flash is a good thing?
Yeah, it's all HTML5, isn't it, at the moment with Apple?
Yes, but you know what? I know Kevin Thorne on Twitter predicted that Apple will capitulate and they will have Flash before the end of the year, and I probably agree with that. They can't avoid the herd forever.
No, that's right. And let's face it, Flash is such a ubiquitous platform now that it certainly makes sense. My son, for example, has got an iPod, and he was desperate for me to try to get one of the iPads, and I was saying, it's not got Flash, I can't justify it. I would need to have that capability.
But you know what? The iPad is fun. I have one, and it is a lot of fun. It's not bad. You don't miss the Flash when you're on it, though you do wish when you went surfing that you could see the websites that do have Flash, and there is some great Flash content out there, and you can't do any e-learning that has Flash content in it, at least not easily at this point. Though there are some changes, and I know you can cross-compile things, but it'll open up. It has to if they want to still become relevant, considering that there is a slew of new tablets coming out running Android.
Yeah, definitely.
There's probably a definitely grounds for a compromise somewhere too. When you look at the amount of the youngest generation and how they are pretty much drunk on the Apple Kool-Aid, where they, without even thinking or doing due diligence on comparing an Apple and a PC, they'll just jump to the Apple because it's cool. It's the cool thing to have. And I won't deny that it definitely is a popular tool. But when it comes to functionality in business, there's a lot of different considerations that have to be considered. So I'm glad Apple is pushing companies forward to have this debate. But I think you're right in that there's still be a compromise at some point. I think for survival, it has to be.
Yeah, I think that was Steve Jobs' heart pounding when you said that about the Kool-Aid. But
yeah,
yeah, I can imagine. But
on earnings day too, so
I
I don't think I have the power to sway their stock price, Eddie.
Coming back to rapid e-learning development, though, I think one of the big things that I've learned over the years, realistically, is that that your e-learning content doesn't have to be award-winning. I know sometimes when you're presented with a project from a client, and it could be in the form of an existing PowerPoint presentation or even a Word document, a 50-page Word document that's nothing more than a user guide. It's very easy to sit there and say, where do I start with this? What is the best way for me to try to ensure that I'm going to make the content meaningful, memorable, motivational, and measurable? But looking at the amount of content, the volume of content that's out there, sometimes it can be quite daunting. But one of the things that I've learned over the years really is that it doesn't need to be award-winning, and it doesn't also need to be all singing, all dancing. What it has to do is make sure that it changes the learner's behavior. And I think that's one of the most important things that as rapid e-learning developers, we need to always bear in mind, that it doesn't have to be all singing, all dancing, but it just has to make sure that it provides the learners with the ability to do the job at hand.
Well, one of the problems with all the courses that quote-unquote win awards is that many times they're designing for the award. Not necessarily for the client, it's for the award. And that creates, I think, an issue. There have been some clients that have had very big awards, and the software internally has failed.
Yeah, definitely.
But it looked great. So that's an issue. I think, and of course, the award ceremonies tend to be somewhat political too, and there's always a little bit of bias and a lot of handshaking and a lot of, I know you and I know you. And so, you know what? It's funny. We've never gone for awards, never had any interest in it. We've had pieces that could have probably won some awards. Just not what we felt was important to e-learning, or to at least our clients. And also our clients do a lot of the stuff we do is under NDA or non-disclosure agreements. We can't show it.
Yeah, exactly.
I always tell people, the best work we've ever done, we can't show. We're just not allowed to.
Yeah, definitely.
There's security reasons or whatever else, or just privacy. And we do a lot of banking applications. We're not allowed to show that.
Yeah,
so that's
definitely.
That's not atypical.
And I don't know about you as well, Rick, but one of the things that I really like to do when a client comes to me and says, I'd like you to create this particular e-learning course, is I love to prototype. And I think that's one of the most effective ways to ensure that you can, create the content quickly, because you then don't have to go through a huge process of doing vast amounts of storyboarding. Obviously, if you're going to be including voiceover, then you're going to have a script. But I really like the idea of using some of the tools that are available in the applications that we use for rapid e-learning